In a shocking turn of events on last night's Late Show, what started as a standard promotional interview erupted into an unprecedented confrontation between Stephen Colbert and Hollywood icon Tom Cruise. The explosive exchange, which ended with Cruise storming off set, has sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry and left viewers wondering if Colbert's infamous provocative style has finally crossed the line. The tension in the Ed Sullivan Theater was palpable from the moment Tom Cruise walked onto the stage. Initially, everything seemed normal. The audience's thunderous applause, Colbert's practiced smile, and Cruise's trademark enthusiasm as he waved to fans. But keen-eyed viewers noticed something off in Colbert's demeanor, a certain edge to his introduction that hinted at the storm brewing beneath the surface. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man who's been running across our screens for 4 decades, though I'm not sure what he's running from, Tom Cruise. Colbert's opening line carried an unusual bite that immediately set an uncomfortable tone. Cruise, ever the professional, responded with his characteristic broad smile and firm handshake, seemingly determined to maintain the promotional nature of his appearance for his latest film, Apex Horizon. The action thriller had been generating significant Oscar buzz, representing something of a career renaissance for the 62-year-old star. The first few minutes proceeded with standard late-night banter, but observant viewers could detect Colbert's unusual persistence in steering the conversation away from the film. Instead, he kept making thinly veiled references to Cruise's personal life and beliefs. So Tom, Apex Horizon deals with a character who discovers a powerful organization has been manipulating reality. I imagine that resonates with you on some level? Colbert asked, his eyebrows raised in a way that suggested more than innocent curiosity. Cruise maintained his composure, pivoting back to the film's themes of heroism and sacrifice. What I love about this character is his unwavering commitment to the truth, Stephen. When he discovers something isn't right, he doesn't back down, no matter the personal cost. As if taking this as a challenge, Colbert's questioning became increasingly pointed. The discussion shifted to a scene in the film where Cruise's character performs a dangerous helicopter stunt. A perfect segue to discuss Cruise's famous dedication to performing his own stunts. But instead of exploring this angle, Colbert took an unexpected turn. You know, Tom, I've always wondered, these death-defying stunts you do, is it because you genuinely believe your faith protects you from harm? Or is it more about controlling the narrative like in other aspects of your life? The question hung in the air for a moment. The studio audience's collective intake of breath was audible. Cruise's smile didn't fade, but it transformed into something more fixed, less genuine. The camera caught a momentary flash in his eyes. Wait, a mixture of surprise and what appeared to be carefully controlled anger. I do my own stunts because I respect the audience, Stephen. They deserve authenticity. And I work with the best safety teams in the business, Cruise replied evenly, his voice maintaining its usual enthusiastic tone, though noticeably tighter. Rather than accepting this professional response, Colbert pressed further. But surely, there's more to it than that. I mean, your need for control is legendary in Hollywood. I've heard stories about how you micromanage everything from lighting to how your co-stars deliver their lines. The audience's uncomfortable murmuring grew louder. This was venturing beyond the typical late-night ribbing into territory that felt personal and unnecessarily antagonistic. Cruise shifted in his seat, his trademark intensity now channeled into maintaining his composure. I'm passionate about delivering the best possible experience for audiences. Everyone on my sets shares that commitment, Cruise responded, his voice lower but still measured. Maybe we should talk about the film's incredible stunt sequences. The helicopter scene took months of planning. Yes, I'm sure it did, Colbert interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. But what fascinates me is how similar your character's paranoia about being watched and controlled mirrors some of your own publicly expressed concerns over the years. At this point, the atmosphere in the studio had transformed completely. The typical lighthearted late-night energy had been replaced by an uncomfortable tension. The camera cut to audience members exchanging confused glances, clearly sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. During the commercial break, viewers at home couldn't see what transpired, but reports from audience members later revealed that Cruz and Colbert had a heated exchange off mic. Production assistants rushed to the stage, and urgent conversations took place between the host, his guest, and various producers. When the show returned from the break, the tension had visibly escalated. Colbert's demeanor had shifted from provocative to outright combative, while Cruz sat with uncharacteristic stillness, his famous energetic gestures notably absent. "Welcome back to The Late Show. We're here with Tom Cruise, discussing his new film and apparently touching some nerves along the way," Colbert said with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. The camera caught Cruise taking a deep breath before responding. "Stephen, I came here tonight to talk about a film that our entire team has poured their hearts into for 3 years. If you're not interested in discussing that, perhaps we should—" "Oh, I'm interested in many things, Tom," Colbert interjected, leaning forward in his chair. "Like how you manage to maintain such tight control over your public image. The way interviews are meticulously negotiated, questions pre-approved, certain topics declared off-limits. It's fascinating, really, almost as if you're playing a character called Tom Cruise, rather than being yourself." The audience fell silent, the tension now so thick it seemed to press against the cameras. For the first time in perhaps his entire career, Tom Cruise appeared genuinely caught off guard on television. His legendary media training was being tested, in a way few had ever dared. "You know what I find interesting, Stephen," Cruise finally said, his voice quiet but intense, "how someone can present themselves as a champion of truth and transparency while ambushing guests on national television. How you can claim to stand for respect and decency while deliberately trying to provoke and embarrass someone who came in good faith to your show." It was Colbert's turn to look momentarily startled. He hadn't expected such direct pushback from the usually controlled star. For a brief moment his carefully crafted persona slipped, revealing a flash of genuine surprise before he recovered. "Oh, come now, Tom. Surely someone who's spent decades in the public eye can handle a few direct questions," Colbert countered, his tone dripping with condescension. "Or are you only comfortable when everything is scripted and controlled?" What happened next would become one of the most discussed moments in late-night television history. Tom Cruise, known for maintaining his cool under the most intense scrutiny, slowly placed his hands on the arms of his chair and leaned forward. His famous intensity now focused entirely on Colbert. "You know what, Stephen? I've respected your show and your audience enough to be honest and open. But what's happening right now isn't a discussion or even an interview. It's an ambush designed for clicks and views, at the expense of basic human decency." The audience erupted in a mixture of gasps, scattered applause, and confused murmuring as the two men stared at each other across the suddenly vast expanse of the talk show desk. The cameras caught the moment in excruciating detail. Cruise's controlled intensity versus Colbert's increasingly flustered attempt to maintain control of his own show. And as the network hastily cut to commercial, viewers were left wondering what could possibly happen when they returned from the break. The confrontation had reached a boiling point, with neither man showing any signs of backing down, and the entire entertainment industry watching with bated breath. Behind the scenes, the production floor erupted into chaos. Network executives were frantically calling into the control room, producers were huddled in urgent conversation, and Colbert's staff looked on in horror as their meticulously planned show spiraled out of control. One production assistant would later anonymously reveal that the show's executive producer physically positioned himself between the two men during the break, attempting to defuse the situation. "We need to get back on track," the producer reportedly pleaded with both men. "This isn't what either of you want." According to multiple sources, Cruise remained stonily silent during this intervention, while Colbert insisted that he was just doing his job and asking the questions Nobody else has the guts to ask. When the cameras rolled again, the atmosphere had transformed from merely tense to openly hostile. The audience, usually energetic and enthusiastic, sat in uncomfortable silence, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented in late-night television. "Welcome back to The Late Show," Colbert began, his voice carrying a forced lightness that contrasted sharply with the rigid set of his shoulders. "We're here with Tom Cruise, who seems to be having some trouble with unscripted moments tonight." The camera cut to Cruise, who sat unnaturally still, his famous smile completely absent. For a man known for his kinetic energy and animated expressions, this stillness spoke volumes. "Actually, Stephen," Cruise responded, his voice low and controlled, "I'm completely comfortable with unscripted moments. What I'm not comfortable with is calculated disrespect masquerading as journalism." Colbert's eyebrows shot up. "Journalism? This is a late-night comedy show. Don't tell me the great Tom Cruise can't take a joke." "Is that what this is?" Cruise leaned forward slightly. "Because it seems like you've prepared an agenda that has nothing to do with my film and everything to do with trying to create a viral moment at my expense." The camera caught Colbert's brief flash of surprise before he recovered with a dismissive laugh. "Wow, talk about paranoia. Maybe you really are like your character in Apex Horizon." "You know what, Stephen?" Cruise said, his voice suddenly quieter but somehow more powerful for it. "I've been in this business for over 40 years. I've done thousands of interviews. I know the difference between tough questions and cheap shots." Colbert's face flushed. "Slightly. Our viewers expect more than just letting celebrities plug their latest projects. They expect authentic conversations." "Authentic?" Cruise repeated, incredulity breaking through his composure. "There's nothing authentic about ambushing someone with personal attacks disguised as questions. That's not hosting. That's bullying." The word bullying seemed to hang in the air between them. Some audience members gasped audibly while others began to murmur among themselves. Social media was already exploding with clips from the first segment. Cruise vs. Colbert, trending nationwide. Within minutes. "I think our audience is intelligent enough to decide what constitutes a legitimate question," Colbert retorted, gesturing toward the crowd, clearly attempting to rally their support. The response was tepid at best, with scattered, uncomfortable applause that quickly died away. "I agree completely," Cruise said, his trademark intensity now fully engaged. "And I think they can also recognize when someone is being deliberately provocative just to generate headlines." What happened next would later be analyzed frame by frame across social media platforms and entertainment news outlets. Colbert, seemingly determined to regain control of the narrative, reached for a blue card on his desk. "Well, since you're clearly uncomfortable discussing anything beyond carefully approved talking points, perhaps we should try a little game instead," Colbert suggested, his smile not reaching his eyes. "It's called True or False, Hollywood Legends." Before Cruise could respond, Colbert continued, "True or false, you have approval over all interview questions before appearing on any show, except, apparently, this one." The audience's collective intake of breath was audible. Cruise's expression hardened into something rarely seen by the public, genuine anger barely contained beneath his professional veneer. "What you're doing right now is exactly why people distrust the media," Cruise responded, his voice steady despite the evident tension. "You invite someone to your show under the pretense of discussing their work, then ambush them with leading questions and insinuations." Colbert's smile turned cold. "I'm just trying to get past the publicist-approved version of Tom Cruise for once. The public deserves more than rehearsed anecdotes and carefully crafted sound bites." "The public deserves respect," Cruise countered, "and so do your guests. This isn't about being afraid of tough questions. It's about basic professional courtesy." The control room was in turmoil. The segment had already run over its allotted time, but nobody dared to cut away from what was quickly becoming one of the most memorable confrontations in late-night history. Network executives were reportedly divided, some demanding an immediate cut to commercial, others transfixed by the ratings potential of the unfolding drama. "You know what I think, Tom?" Colbert leaned forward, dropping all pretense of casual banter. "I think the real reason you're upset is that, for once, you're not in control. For once, someone isn't treating you like the almighty Tom Cruise who gets to dictate every aspect of his public appearance." Cruise's expression shifted subtly, something flashing in his eyes that made even Colbert momentarily falter. "You think this is about control?" Cruise asked quietly. "This is about respect, something you clearly know very little about. I've sat across from journalists who asked much tougher questions than yours, Stephen. The difference is, they did it with integrity, not cheap gotcha tactics designed to make themselves look clever." The tension in the studio was unbearable. Camera operators exchanged glances, audience members sat frozen, and social media feeds exploded with real-time reactions. Industry insiders who happened to be watching live began texting each other furiously, knowing they were witnessing a pivotal moment that would be discussed for years. Colbert, seemingly surprised by Cruise's unflinching response, attempted to pivot. "Let's talk about the actual film, then." "No," Cruise interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "I think we're well past that point, don't you?" For perhaps the first time in his hosting career, Stephen Colbert appeared momentarily at a loss for words. The power dynamic had shifted palpably, and everyone in the studio could feel it. Tom Cruise, despite being the one under attack, had somehow seized control of the narrative. The silence stretched for what felt like minutes, but was likely only seconds before Colbert attempted to reclaim his footing with a nervous chuckle. "Well, Tom, I think our viewers appreciate candid conversations. That's all I'm trying to—" "No," Cruise interrupted again, his voice remaining measured but firm. "What you're trying to do is create controversy at my expense. Let's be honest, with each other and your audience." Cruise shifted in his seat, turning slightly to address the studio audience directly. "I've been doing this a long time. I've sat across from the best in the business. Oprah, Barbara Walters, Johnny Carson, David Letterman. Tough interviewers who asked difficult questions, but always with a fundamental respect for their guests and their viewers." The audience, previously frozen in uncomfortable silence, began to nod in agreement. A few scattered claps emerged quickly, growing into more substantial applause. Colbert's expression tightened as he realized he was losing the room. "I think my audience knows that I've always prided myself on asking the questions others won't." "There's a difference," Cruise said, cutting him off again, "between asking meaningful questions and manufacturing conflict. Tonight crossed that line." He turned back to Colbert, his famous intensity now focused like a laser. "You know what the real shame is, Stephen? We could have had an authentic conversation. We could have discussed the incredible team of stunt performers who risked their lives for this film. We could have talked about the advances in film technology that let us create sequences that have never been seen before. We could have given your audience something valuable instead of whatever this is." A production assistant would later describe the control room as completely silent at this moment, with the show's director frantically signaling to cut to commercial, while the network executives watching the live feed were reportedly transfixed by the unfolding drama. Colbert, visibly flustered but determined to maintain his position as the one in charge, tried once more. "I think we're having a bit of a misunderstanding here. Perhaps after another break—" "I don't think that's necessary," Cruise replied, his demeanor shifting subtly. With deliberate movements, he removed his microphone and placed it on the desk between them. "I think we've given your audience enough to think about tonight." The gesture, calm, controlled, but unmistakably final, sent shockwaves through the studio. Several audience members gasped audibly. Colbert's eyes widened in genuine surprise. "Are you leaving?" he asked, the affected smugness completely gone from his voice. "Yes, Stephen, I am," Cruise responded, standing up smoothly. and I think everyone watching tonight understands why. What happened next would become one of the most replayed moments in late-night television history. Rather than storming off, in anger as many celebrities might have done, Cruz straightened his jacket calmly, then extended his hand to Colbert. "I wish you well," he said simply. The gesture, extending professional courtesy even in the midst of such a confrontation, left Colbert visibly conflicted. After a moment's hesitation, he rose and shook Cruz's hand, though the tension between them remained palpable. "Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Cruise," Colbert announced awkwardly as Cruz turned and walked off the stage with characteristic dignity, acknowledging the audience with a brief wave. The studio erupted into a cacophony of reactions, some applauding Cruz's stance, others calling out in confusion, and many simply murmuring among themselves in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. Left alone at his desk, Colbert attempted to salvage the situation. "Well, that was, unexpected. We'll be right back after these messages with, He looked down at his notes, clearly thrown off his game. "With our musical guest for the evening." The cameras continued rolling for a few seconds too long, capturing Colbert's genuine look of discomfort before finally cutting to commercial. By then, social media was already ablaze with clips and commentary. Backstage, according to multiple sources, the confrontation had immediate repercussions. Network executives descended upon the production offices even before the broadcast had ended. Cruz's publicity team, led by his longtime representative, reportedly engaged in a heated exchange with the show's producers. "This was an ambush, plain and simple," one insider quoted the representative as saying, "In 40 years, I've never seen such a deliberate attempt to antagonize a guest." As the final segment of the show aired, a visibly shaken Colbert introducing the musical guest, the incident was already becoming the top trending topic nationwide. Industry insiders began weighing in almost immediately, with the majority expressing support for Cruz's handling of the situation. By the following morning, the confrontation had transcended mere entertainment news to become a talking point on morning shows and news programs across all networks. Clips of the exchange were played and analyzed repeatedly, with commentators and body language experts dissecting every gesture and word. What we witnessed was a masterclass in maintaining composure under provocative questioning, noted one prominent media analyst. Cruz refused to be baited into an emotional response and instead held Colbert accountable for his tactics in real time. The show's overnight ratings revealed a significant spike during the confrontation, followed by a steep drop-off after Cruz's departure, data that would later be cited in discussions about the ethics of manufacturing conflict for viewership. The fallout was swift and substantial. Colbert's usual opening monologue the following night notably avoided any mention of the incident, but the damage was already done. Several high-profile celebrities scheduled to appear on the show in the coming weeks reportedly requested postponements or cancellations, citing scheduling conflicts. Network executives called an emergency meeting to address what one insider described as a potential crisis of confidence in the show's ability to book A-list talent going forward. Industry publications ran opinion pieces questioning whether Colbert's approach had finally crossed the line from challenging to simply disrespectful. For his part, Cruz maintained a dignified silence in the immediate aftermath, allowing his actions on the show to speak for themselves. His representatives issued only a brief statement. "Mr. Cruz has always valued authentic engagement with audiences and respects interviewers who share that commitment." 3 days after the incident, as the controversy showed no signs of abating, Colbert finally addressed it directly at the opening of his show. "I want to take a moment to talk about what happened earlier this week," he began, his usual bravado noticeably subdued. "Upon reflection, I recognize that my approach with our guest was neither constructive nor respectful. That's not the kind of discourse I want to foster on this show." Without specifically naming Cruz, he continued, "To our guest and to our viewers who expect better, I offer my sincere apology." The mea culpa, while well received by some, was viewed by many as too little, too late. The incident had already cemented itself in late-night television lore, a rare moment when the carefully constructed facade of celebrity interviews cracked, revealing the often tense reality beneath the surface of entertainment journalism. For industry insiders, the confrontation represented something more significant than just an awkward television moment. It was a reminder that even in an era of carefully managed public images and pre-approved questions, authenticity and respect remain values that resonate with audiences. What we saw, as one veteran publicist put it, was the collision of two approaches to public life, one built on provocative moments designed for social media, and another built on maintaining professional standards even under pressure. In that collision, the overwhelming consensus seemed to be that Tom Cruise, by refusing to play by the new rules of engagement, had prevailed, not through anger or drama, but through something far more powerful: dignity.